Welcome everyone to the second Policy Lab within the Art of Just City Making series. As you know, this series is an initiative of the French Council Presidency of the EU, and it has been organized in strong cooperation with the UKN. So today I will be the co-moderator together with Nuala Morgan. I am indeed, my name is Lidia Del Conte. I am a Policy and Project Officer at the UKN. Whereas Nuala Morgan is Head of Communication and Capitalization at URBACT. Just a few words for those of you who don't know us. The UKN, we are a network of national governments working together on urban matters. So what we do is to promote sustainable urban developments by, on one hand, bridging a gap between research policy and practice, but also by facilitating intergovernmental cooperation on urban matters. So specifically, what we do is also supporting the urban program of EU Council presidencies. And this is the case for the French, actually, Council presidency that is happening right now. So without further ado, I would actually like to give the floor to Eric Briat, who is Deputy Director of City and Urban Cohesion, and will welcome you also on behalf of the French Council presidency. So Eric, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Livia. Dear all, on behalf of the French presidency of the EU, I welcome you to this second Policy Lab dedicated to the just and digital city from the series which has started last week, namely Art of Just City Making, organized with EUKN and specifically today in cooperation with URBACT. The previous presidencies with Germany, Portugal and Slovenia have defined strategic framework documents to keep the momentum of the urban development and make evolved the national urban policies regarding the current challenges. To pursue and go further, the French presidency has decided to focus on one of the three dimensions of the new Leipzig Charter endorsed by the European ministers in charge of urban matters under the German presidency in November 2020. Based on the principle "no one left behind" concept, we aim to explore on how to implement the new Leipzig Charter and specifically the just dimension. Broadly speaking, in France, we share and promote the principles of governance as described in the new Leipzig Charter, such as the integrated approach, the co-design of policies, the citizen participation, the multi-level governance, and the capacity building of cities. In particular, we choose this subject because we believe that at the European level, we can deepen the social dimension of the urban agenda for the EU, and the dimension of just cities is a way to mitigate inequalities within cities and between areas. Since 40 years in France, we have developed a long-lasting policy, so-called Politique de la Ville, for the 1,500 most vulnerable and poorest neighborhoods. This policy has three following objectives: to tackle the urban poverty, to improve living conditions, and to promote employment. Those deprived areas faced with socio-economical difficulties are targeted by multi-partnership approach, which is called a city contract. To support this integrated way to develop social and urban dimension through city contracts, we have identified three main pillars: social cohesion, living condition and urban renewal, employment, and economic development. One of the main specificities is the involvement of citizens in the implementation of this policy by citizen councils. You could refer to the previous Policy Lab on Just and Green City, organized on the 20th of April, for further details on this national urban policy, and I think you can find the link in the chat. Beyond Politique de la Ville, France implements several policies for revitalization of city center, and has developed dedicated programs for small and medium-sized cities for a sustainable urban development. At the National Agency of Territorial Cohesion, one of the main activities concerns the digital, not only regarding the infrastructure, but also the digital innovation. Pierre-Louis Rolle, who is one of the panelists today, is in charge of this implementation of innovation at national level, and he will talk to you about this French policy. Inhabitants are facing several challenges when it comes to digital city. It can be a useful tool to permit social cohesion or to foster a participative approach. But at the same time, it could also be a way to deepen gap between areas and citizens and thus to produce negative impacts. This policy lab will allow us to propose recommendations in order to prevent and correct gap between areas and cities regarding the digital use. We expect from those policy labs to explore and deepen how to better embed the social and just issues and the inclusion of digital dimension within public action at different levels. We deeply thank EUKN and the speakers for being part of this process that will be explained by Livia and Nuala. And we are also happy that URBACT is co-organizing this policy lab as URBACT has the ground experience regarding an inclusive way to use digital tools and to improve the capacity building of cities. I wish you fruitful discussions. Thanks for your attention.
Thank you so much, Eric, for this welcome and also for putting this Policy Lab series and specifically this Policy Lab into context. Also for mentioning and touching upon the Politique de la Ville. As you said, my colleagues are pasting the link to the previous Policy Lab in the chat, so you can rewatch and find more information that you indeed reported to us in the previous Policy Lab. So feel free to rewatch what happened last week. Just a few additions, maybe, because you mentioned the new Leipzig Charter as a very important strategic framework. And I would just want to highlight that the digital dimension is actually a cross-cutting one within the new Leipzig Charter. And interestingly enough, one of the reasons to update the 2007 Leipzig Charter was really to add more emphasis on the digital dimension of urban policy. So it's really important us being here today and discussing such important matters. And then indeed, as you mentioned, there is an important process going on regarding this recommendation that we would need to produce, because one of the concrete objectives of this Policy Lab series is to produce a policy paper with a set of recommendations targeting different governmental levels on how to foster just city making, indeed. And the Policy Labs are really an important platform to draft these recommendations. So we will hear a suggestion from our speakers, but we would also like to understand from our audiences what's their take on such recommendation. And this policy document will be a really important output of the French Council presidency, and it will be presented at the Director General for Urban Matters at the end of June. So this is a bit also for the participants to get an understanding of why we are here today and what we are aiming at producing. So this is also good for you to know. And now I would like to hand over to Nuala, my co-moderators, to also welcome on behalf of URBACT. So Nuala, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Livia, and good morning, everyone. On behalf of URBACT, it is my pleasure to welcome you all here this morning. My thanks go to the French presidency team at the National Agency for Territorial Cohesion for putting this partnership in place, and to the colleagues at EUKN, in particular Livia, for the smooth collaboration. So URBACT is the European Territorial Cooperation Programme dedicated to cities of all sizes, promoting integrated and sustainable urban development in Europe. We do this by supporting exchange and learning networks, by building the capacity of city staff to work in an integrated and participatory way, and through sharing knowledge and good practice of what works and what doesn't. Since the program began in 2002, nearly 1,000 cities in over 140 networks have developed and implemented local action plans, transferred good practices, and increased their skills in action learning. So when you hear concepts like integrated approach, participation, sustainability, you can understand that URBACT from its beginning was built on the principles of the Leipzig Charter. Almost 20 years of helping cities put those principles into action have given URBACT a rich basis for contributing to the renewal of the Leipzig Charter from 2018 to 2020. The world indeed was a very different place in 2007, not least where digitalization was concerned. And as Livia mentioned, the new Leipzig Charter recognizes that. In addition to being an industrial sector, among others, digitalization cuts across all aspects of the city. And of course, the COVID-19 pandemic was a real game changer when it comes to digitalization, pushing cities to adapt, whether they were ready or not. One of our experts told us that the running joke in 2020 was that it was no longer chief executives or CIOs or chief digital officers that were the principal architects of digital transition in organizations and cities, but indeed COVID-19. It was the basics being digitalized that made the biggest difference to citizens, making core information available online, enabling digital delivery of services, or online interaction with staff and data became basic needs that cities had to deliver on. Yet it is many of the poorest and most vulnerable that don't have access to the internet and therefore are disproportionately affected by this sudden move to relying on digital services, which is where the concept of the just and digital city really comes into play. The theme of social inclusion, which is the closest at URBACT that we can equate to the just city, is the most prevalent in URBACT networks, 29% overall, and with a relatively small number of networks under the access and use of ICT theme. But the integrated approach that URBACT takes means that even in networks where digital is not the headline theme, cities still have to tackle this aspect, not least in ensuring the participation of all affected groups. Even before COVID-19 enforced the behavioral changes needed to make a massive shift to existing technologies, we've been exploring the transformative role of digitalization, both in terms of opportunities and risks. Technologies are not inherently neutral. They are built by humans who have specific worldviews and biases, just as cities are too. And the dedicated URBACT community Tech Place was set up as a safe space for cities negotiating the digital transition. You can find articles and case studies there from cities across Europe, and not just the digital frontrunners. We put a particular focus on small and medium-sized cities who make up the majority of Europe's urban fabric. Indeed, 42% of the city partners in URBACT in this program period are from small or very small cities. The Tech Place community is there also for you as a space for asking questions and support. And in a moment, we're going to hear from one of URBACT's leading experts on creating inclusive and digital cities. Allison Partridge is a member of the Tech Place support team and also lead expert on the URBACT Tech Revolution Network. She will set the scene for today's City Lab with an insight on digitalization as a policy instrument, helping cities dare to dream of an inclusive city. Then we will hear from our multi-level panel. We are joined today by Pierre-Louis Rolle, who is Director of Strategy and Innovation at the French National Agency for Territorial Cohesion, and he will share his experience of changing the narrative on smart cities and the importance of digital literacy. We are also joined by Maria Iaroianni, who is Senior Policy Officer at the European Commission DG for Research and Innovation, and she will talk about the inclusive digitalization for the climate neutral and smart cities mission. And finally, Nicolas Castet from the city of Agen, who is a lead partner of the URBACT Active Citizens Network, will share how Agen uses digital tools to include citizens in local government. Then it will be over to you to react on the recommendations made by our panelists. We'll be asking you to vote for the ones you find most important, so be ready to have an opinion. This is a great opportunity to influence the policy discussion. And to get you ready, I'll hand back over to Livia for the first poll to find out who is in our virtual room.
Thank you so much, Noala. Yeah, I think now we have a very good understanding of who the panelists will be, and also what Urbact indeed has to do with digitalization and what can really bring to the table. So thank you for that. So I would like to invite you to a Mentimeter poll. So you can find the instruction on the screen. You can scan this QR code. This is the easiest way usually, or you can go to the website and enter that code. And what we would like to hear from you today, I don't know if you have accessed the Mentimeter yet. Yes. Okay, what we would like to hear from you today is just what kind of organization do you represent, so that we have a bit of a better understanding of who is influencing this policy process. Quite some representative from the national level, but it's changing. So local is now leading. I will give you some more 30 seconds. And then I think, some other, okay, it's changing. But I would say that the top two are local and national. So that's quite interesting. And EU, so all these three levels are represented today in our panel. So okay, well, then thank you so much for replying to this first poll. Good to know who we have behind the screens. And now I would like to hand over again to Noala, because we have prepared another something for you, Noala.
Yes, thanks, Livia. So now we would like to ask you to think of the ideal just digital city. And what is the first feature that comes to your mind when we say just a digital city? So again, using the Mentimeter website, if you can stay connected there, this is a word cloud. So we're asking you to input the first word or first few words that come to your mind when you imagine an ideal just digital city. So what does that speak to you? Whether you're speaking from the perspective of the local level as a national or an EU representative, what do you think are the features of an ideal just and digital city? So yeah, so far we see that inclusive is very front and center there in terms of what a just and digital city means, making sure that there's accessibility, connection, transparency, equal access. Yeah, so all aspects around ensuring that there is the possibility to participate in digital life, empowerment, sustainability. Yes, I think we've also seen that the digital city is also put forward as one of the means of achieving our sustainability goals. But diversity, just impacts, and yes, transparency, I think are coming as close follows up to inclusive and accessibility, to ensure that yes, the digital city doesn't increase the digital divide. I think we'll be hearing more of that from our speakers in just a moment. So I think we've had all of our answers so far for what is a just and digital city. So I maybe will hand the floor now over to our introductory expert, Allison Partridge, so that she can give us her thoughts on what are the ideal features of a digital inclusive city. And Allison, you're going to talk to us today about digitalization as a policy instrument, as a way of creating inclusion and helping small and medium-sized cities dare to dream and believe in the art of the possible. So I'll hand the floor over to you, Allison, for our introductory words. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Nuala. Yeah, so you've perfectly encapsulated what I'm going to speak about today. And on the next slide, I break down a little bit what I'm going to do. So I'm going to start with some definitions, because I think language is very important. So I'm going to think about the definitions and the differences between diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice. And then going to reflect on creating just digital cities with an economic lens, because that's my background. So I'm going to think about lessons from Urbact, around creating inclusive digital economies. And then I'll finish with some top tips on what cities can do and 2 potential policy recommendations. So in the next slide, a very brief introduction to myself. Nuala has already told you a little bit about my role with URBACT, but I also work in London. I founded an organisation called One Tech, which connects underserved communities with opportunities in tech. And I've always worked, for the 25-year career that I've had, I've always focused on working with small and medium-sized cities. So let's think a little bit about in the next slide, about the definitions and the differences between diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice. And I think this is a really important starting point, because we band these words around and quite often use them interchangeably, but they are not the same thing. So starting with diversity, this is about the variance of characteristics in a population of people. Equity is recognizing that different populations might need to be treated in a slightly different way. So it's not necessarily okay just to treat everybody the same. Inclusion refers to the active practice of cultivating an environment where people feel like they belong and they feel a sense of acceptance. And then finally, justice is about the systemic fair treatment of people that results in equitable outcomes and equality of opportunity for everybody. So in the next slide, there's a very well-known visual. Some of you will probably have seen this already. There are lots of different variations of this, and some people don't like it, but I think it's a really easy and quick way of thinking about the differences, particularly between equality, equity, and justice. So here are 3 people watching a football game, and on the left-hand side, we might think about equality. So they're all being treated the same, but are they getting the same? Are they having the same outcome? No, they're not. So the small person is not seeing anything of the football game. In the second, the middle frame, everybody gets the support they need, and they all get to see the football game. But in the third frame, all 3 can see the game without any additional support or accommodation. And this is because the cause of the inequity was addressed. So the systemic barrier has been removed. So if we move to the next slide, I'm not going to go into this one in too much detail. It's quite blurry, but just a different way of looking at the same issue, and particularly drawing your attention to the bottom right-hand corner, justice. So here, again, this is a systemic removal of all the barriers, which enables everybody to have equality of access to equitable outcomes. And I think that's where we want to end up when we're thinking about just cities. So moving on then, I just wanted to share a couple of quotes with you on the next slide. So one particularly important quote from the incredible Angela Davis, and already we've talked about systemic change. I think this quote from Angela Davis, diversity without changing the structure simply brings those who were previously excluded into a process that continues to be as harmful as it was before. So we really need to think about this issue structurally, systemically. We need to make changes to the causes of the issues that we're living with and not just treat the symptoms of those causes. So in the next slide, I'm going to say a little bit about the next few slides. I'm going to say a little bit about what I think creating just digital cities means. So for me, I come at this from a sort of tech and digital lens. That's my background. And this is about democratizing access to technology. So Nuala said about the COVID pandemic and how many people were more able to access services from their cities through technology, but how a lot of people were actually further removed from the services they needed to access. So we need to work really hard to ensure that everybody has equal access to technology. And by doing that, we can actually really open up public services in a way that they've never been open before. So for me also, creating just digital cities means that we need to diversify the people who are creating the technology. I'll come on to this in a little bit more in a moment, but the majority of people who create technology that is being used in our cities are white men. They're a homogenous group, and therefore they're not thinking in a diverse way. So we need to think about how we diversify the people who are creating the technologies. And finally, I think we need to create inclusive digital economies. If we move to the next slide, I'll say a little bit more about why this is important. So today we heard that Elon Musk is now going to be the sole owner of technology, of Twitter. And I think this is a really important example, a really good example, a very timely example of the power that the people that create technology hold. And so for me, it's really important that we have lots of different types of people, different communities from different backgrounds in different geographies, with different characteristics, creating the tech that we're using in our cities. And it's really clear from there's so much research into the paucity of diversity and inclusion in the makeup of tech founders. So if we take the State of European Tech report from 2021, all male teams raised 91% of all capital. So that's teams without any women in. So only 9% of teams who actually raised money to create tech services and products in Europe last year actually even included a woman. So that's just thinking about, you know, the massive issue there is in terms of discrimination and how systemic the problem is. So if we move to the next slide, please. So I believe that the answer to creating just digital cities is the creation of inclusive digital economies. If we don't create inclusive digital economies, inequalities that will continue to contribute to massive risks in society and continue to be a huge drain on public resource. But they're also really good for society. So we need to connect local residents with economic opportunities on their doorstep. And that means that they can contribute meaningfully to the economy and the society in which they live. So they're not just residents, but they're actively contributing to the way that the city functions. So for me, economic inclusion and social inclusion are inextricably linked. And I believe that this actually creates a unique opportunity for small and medium-sized cities. So in the next slide, we start to think about an example from URBACT. So I've worked for around 8 to 10 years with a UK city called Barnsley, which is in the north of the UK. It's a post-industrial city which lost around 50,000 jobs in the 1980s from the coal mining sector in a population of around just over 200,000. So huge structural adjustment was needed in this city. And they've decided to try and create a more knowledge-based economy. And in the last 5 years, that's been focusing very much around using digital and technological solutions. Sorry, that's my notes just falling on the floor. Digital and technology solutions to actually create a digital economy. So they've been involved in 3 different URBACT programs as lead partner. First of all, Tech Town, and latterly Tech Revolution, and then the second phase of Tech Revolution. And they've used the 500,000 odd euros that they've had from those 3 URBACT experiences to generate a further 50 million euros for the local economy. And they are in the process of creating a digital campus, which they're calling the place of possibilities. So this just goes to show the power of these small seeds that URBACT plants, and demonstrates that from mighty oaks, from little acorns can grow. So in the next slide, I say a little bit more about the way that Barnsley is developing, or the sort of focuses of SEAM, the digital campus. So they're thinking about how to connect local people with local economic opportunities to fill digital roles. They're thinking about creating founders who come from the local communities as well. They're wanting to develop a diverse economic ecosystem that spatially supports an inclusive economy. So really thinking about how different parts of the town centre join up in order to create a place that the local residents can use and becomes more inclusive for local people. And finally, they're really active in terms of driving dialogue and thought leadership. And in fact, I would say are driving that dialogue, at least at a regional level, and very active at driving the dialogue and policy development at a national level. And Barnsley is a really excellent example of a team of people who have really taken some quite informed risks. I mean, they always have the evidence to back up their risks, but taken quite a lot of informed risks and really daring to dream in the art of the possible. So on the next slide, please, I start to think a little bit about what cities can do. So here there are 8 different things. They're all interrelated. The things that I think that cities can do to support the creation of just digital cities. And I think it's important, we're thinking about the digital as a policy instrument, and there's no doubt that public policy can have a really important role in making cities more inclusive. And I think public sector institutions in particular have a duty to step in and address market failures, and particularly those that where these issues fall most heavily on disadvantaged communities. And I think, as Nuala and Livia already said, we really witnessed this very, very heavily during the COVID pandemic, where all the issues that in the more diverse communities in Europe cities face were completely exacerbated by the pandemic. So I think on an economic point of view, cities can also increase access to participation. They can support underserved communities to join up with local high-value networks. I think in the creation of technology, it's really important that people are signposted to different networks so that they can access diverse talent. They can also facilitate access to finance, and there's some really good examples at a European level of cities doing different things to facilitate access to different types of finance. And they can also help offer additional support, coaching, training, mentoring to address structural barriers. I come back to this importance of addressing structural barriers in a systemic way. So we move on to the next slide. I put together some top tips just based on some work that we've been doing in London. So the last 4 years of running One Tech in London, we've learned lots of lessons. This is not an easy subject to tackle. It's very, very challenging. But I think the most important thing, and again, this relates back to some of the introductory comments around the Leipzig Charter, citizens are at the heart of this. And the diversity of those citizens is really important. You need to understand who you are supporting, who you're wanting to work with, who you're trying to target, and how. And those communities really need to be part of the co-creation of developing the solutions to the challenges that we're all facing. This is never going to work if it's done in a top-down way by a homogenous group of senior city leaders. So I believe that we all need to invest in ourselves. I've certainly come on a massive journey myself in terms of understanding my own privilege and how I can use that privilege to affect change for different communities in different parts of Europe. So I think we all need to invest in ourselves, do the reading, go on courses, and really understand how we can use our own position to create just digital cities. We can create opportunities and channels for ongoing dialogue and learning. And we need to think about how this cuts across everything that our cities are doing. So you cannot just do diversity, inclusion, creation of just digital cities over here. It needs to absolutely cut across absolutely everything, all the other policy areas that a city is doing. And I think that's why I really welcome this series of webinars, because it's really good to see it addressed through different lenses. So I think that the final point on this slide I wanted to pick out was the importance of meeting communities where they're at. So you cannot expect people to come to you. I refer both online and offline. So it's really good to do research into where these different communities linger, whether or not in public spaces, in libraries, in community centres, but also online. What social networking sites are they using? How are they communicating with each other? How can you communicate more effectively with them? And part of that is to use appropriate imagery and messaging when you're trying to engage these different target groups. So the last slide, it shares my 2 policy recommendations. The first is predominantly a national level, but it would trickle down to a regional and local level. And this is about facilitating access to finance and support for tech and digital entrepreneurs from underserved and underrepresented communities, particularly to enable the creation of new tech for good solutions, which can be put to good use in cities. And the second, which is relevant to all levels, is to mandate diversity, equity and inclusion action plans to make them a requirement for all public policies and grants in the same way, for example, that you might be thinking about sustainability plans. So that's my opening remarks. I hope that's what people were expecting, and I look forward to hearing the rest of the panel discussion.
Thank you so much, Allison. So besides the fact that you were perfectly on time, really, so congratulations for that. Now, thank you so much for this introduction. Indeed, it was very dense, sometimes bitter, I have to say, but also hopeful. So thank you very much. And also, I believe it really showed the importance of maintaining integrated approaches and really how all the dimension of the new Leipzig Charter in the end they come together. So the opening and all the distinction you made between what is justice, diversity, equity, it really showed the importance of sometime indeed taking a step back and reflecting on what we are doing really at the source, really to produce systemic change. So thank you very much for that. And now I'm curious to hear also from our panelists what they will think and how will their intervention be linked with these first thoughts shared by Allison. So I would like to give the floor to Pierre-Louis. So I would like to start with Pierre-Louis from the ANCT. And I would like to ask you a question that is pretty much in line with what we already asked to our participants. So my question to you is to imagine an ideal just digital city, so being a bit more on the hopeful side, let's say, and name one or two features that comes to your mind. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Livia, and hello, everyone. So in my opinion, the ideal just digital city is a city where digital has been put to its right place. That means just not a set of technology devices, but proceeding from a democratic debate and proceeding from a political platform where the citizens and the elected officials have discussed about the smart city. And I think that digital technology is not disembedded from public policy. You know, it's just a tool to write policy, a way to do public actions, and not a way to define it. So for us, it is very important that you have to link all the tech you use to write your local public policies in order to define that just digital city, and not just add a layer of Internet of Things, of IoT. And we have to divest from this panopticon vision of a smart city with all the IoT, all the captors and so on, and shift toward a more people-centered smart city. Sometimes you have to have less digital in order to have a more digitally just city. And if I could cite two key features, well, it would not be technical ones, so to speak. I think an ideal city should be one that is designed with participatory process, designed with the citizens. And in that aspect, the smart city strategy of Barcelona was a seminal example. And another key is interoperability, sorry. And you should rely on open innovation, on open systems, and open source, and be interoperable between your several departments of a city, between with civil society on your territory, and with other cities on another level. So inclusiveness, participation, and interoperability. Sorry, it's a bit difficult to say in English.
I already know that these points will resonate somehow with the intervention of Nicolas, also from the city of Agen. But first, giving the floor to Nicolas, I would like to give the floor to Maria Ieroianni to respond to the same question. So please imagine a just ideal city and name one or two features that would define that.
Yes, good morning to all. Thank you very much for inviting me in this event. Well, for me, the ideal city and for our program and for the initiatives that we have set up in Horizon 2020, but in Horizon Europe and within the climate neutral and smart cities, is a human-centered city. First of all, a city that leaves no one behind, is a city for the citizens, where technological solutions, innovative solutions, digital services work for the citizens and not the other way around, where we take holistic approach, participatory innovative governance, and where citizens are engaged, are empowered, they are in the center of the process as co-creators, main actors of innovation, and where solutions are co-created and implemented with the citizens. So we look at cities as living laboratories laboratories of open innovation where the solutions, climate resilience and climate neutrality is cross-sectoral to all other sectors, and where we empower cities in their green and digital transition. So we look at the green and digital, inclusive, just city. Thank you. Very detailed, I would say.
Yeah, no, it was just in this first round to get an understanding, and you touched upon, you used some words that already our participants share, such as empowerment, and yeah, I also see that it will resonate with Nicola. So Nicola, the floor is yours. I would like to ask you the same question, and I think you will be happy with the views of the other panelists.
Absolutely. Hello, everyone. Thank you, first of all, for welcoming me today. Yes, what has been said, well, I will kind of keep on this idea of having just digital city to be a place created with citizens, by citizens, for citizens. First of all, let me come to maybe introduce our network because Agen is lead partner of Active Citizen Network, which is composed with 8 small and medium cities, and we are working specifically on participatory democracy. And we are also taking into account, of course, digital aspects, because we've seen that, and we've seen it lately with the French election. Nowadays, there's a strong mistrust between political parties and politics proposed, when we had the study visits within the network, seeing our partners, we could see that there was this gap between citizens and elected officials. And in Agen, we try to empower citizens by electing neighborhood councils and also giving them a strong budget of 375,000 euros to manage over a 6-year mandate upon neighborhood improvements. And such decentralized and power allows working in closer cooperation with citizens as they are getting more involved because it's their neighborhood and they know people who are living there in their territory and they feel very concerned. So such governance model can support citizens in digital transition as well. So this is why an ideal just digital city would be, of course, a place created digital with the citizens, because we also believe that they have their own expertise of use of digital tools as well. Of course, we have to take into account the issues with the needs, the new digital tools for some citizens, what we call the digital gap, because some of them are very far from using digital tools. We also have to be aware of what we called, if you remember, most of us, we had this digital fatigue that we have during the pandemic situation. So we have also to take into account all these aspects. But we believe also that using digital tools could be a real good opportunity to create link between people and support them by linking people and having each other support on digital tools as well. So yeah, that's mainly how I would see an ideal digital city.
Thank you so much. It's very nice to see how the vision is pretty much shared. So I think that's a very good ground to work on. And now I would like to hand over to my co-moderator, Nuala, to get into what is already there and what we need to still do to get to that point of an ideal just digital city.
Exactly. The moment now is to try and shift from our ideal future digital city to concretely what do we have now and what do we need to do to create, or should I say co-create, just digital cities. So I'm going to go back to our panelists, and we'll give you a little bit more time to develop from each of your perspectives what's going on in your work around the digital cities, and how you're going to, let's say, put the concrete steps in place to reach this ideal. So I'll go back first to Pierre-Louis from the French National Agency for Territorial Cohesion, and you can tell us, Pierre, about the work that you're doing and how you're trying to change this narrative around smart cities in France.
Thank you. Well, our agency has been tasked with several programs for digital policies, notably on the matter of connectivity. We have been tasked with the deployment of very high-speed internet key infrastructures such as fiber optic to home or 5G. And we are closing on this deployment. So connectivity won't be an issue in the next 2 years to come, and we are going to focus on other programs, such as tackling the digital divide, the development of third places such as Fab Labs, hackerspaces, urban farms, and so on, and the creation of digital services essential for the daily life of citizens. And that's, for us, fostering an ideal environment for smart territories is the convergence of all these different programs. And we think that before starting to deploy tech and devices on the territories, you have to have first connectivity, then as said Nicolas in the previous panel, to close the digital gap and to raise citizen awareness about the issues. And we need digital literacy if we want to fulfill this promise of designing the just digital city with the citizen. And it implies spreading digital culture to have a debate about these issues and to develop the future use of such services. And in that prospect, we enroll the digital society strategy for the government, and it draws both from a popular education approach and from a will to spread digital culture from seniors to job seekers to the youth, and it's a very broad approach regarding digital skills, not with a promise of transforming every citizen in a programmer, but with this popular notion of digital culture. And one another important aspect is access to rights and inclusivity, because a lot of our citizens are left aside with the digitization of administrative procedures, and we must be sure that they will not be excluded as well from their city and from their local environment. So to exemplify a little bit about what we are doing to tackle that, well, it's been a major investment for the government, thanks to the support of the European Union for our recovery plan. We invested 250 million euros in that strategy, and the key measure was the deployment of 4,000 digital advisors all around the country. So basically, the government is supporting local governments to recruit them. We are going to subsidize the salary for 2 years, and then as well as an initial training of 3 months. And we are deploying all these digital advisors in social centers, in libraries, in hospitals, in third places with farmers, and they are very different mission, but they are here to help the public to acquire basic digital skills and to develop this digital culture. We have as well designed a digital voucher in order to finance more advanced skills and to more efficiently target the citizens who need it need it most. Sorry, and we think it is very, very important to have either national and a local strategy for digital inclusion. Digital inclusion and closing the digital gap is not just about connectivity and bringing the internet. It's as well teaching citizens about the digital stakes, and with that we will succeed in scaling all our products and digital services we want to enroll in our cities and at the national level. And we believe that if we want to succeed in building smart cities, they have to be people-centered, and that means that we have to design the tech with the citizen. And when they have this awareness, then you can design and experiment locally and include all the stakeholders in that. So, and one of our key problem is to scale all these experiments. When you have experimented with the citizen, what does it mean to scale for a public actor on a technical on a tech standpoint? And for that, you need to build coalitions. You have to include citizens, you have to include the private sector, you have to include the local governments, and for that, the best vehicle we found is to invest in digital commons. You have to build an open source, you have to build with open standards, and you have to build with open data. You have to build a participatory governance, associating all the different public and private stakeholders to ensure sustainability, design, and a way of innovation in a continued way. And I couldn't stress the open enough. We have to go technical with the smart city. You have to debate the features with the citizen. You have to be transparent with the use of data. And we think that €1 of public funding should go to €1 for public good. And the example by Allison Partridge in the introduction is striking with Twitter. We must prevent monopolies and we must prevent lock-in for public actors. It is as well a matter of sovereignty. So we have started to think about this a few years ago when the French government started to use the DCDIM participatory software, which is to Barcelona again. That was born in Spain and it's used today in many countries. So we launched an incubator. We are financing like 50 projects launched by local governments with a cocktail of grants and with a cocktail of experts to ensure that accessibility, cybersecurity, design is taken into account, and we are leveraging all these tech projects which are designed in one city, in one region, and we want to scale it in the whole country. And to conclude, I could say that we could go further because we often share the same needs in terms of digital services in a city in Germany, in a city in Greece, or in a city in France. And we are convinced that a European structure that could carry digital commons with a shared governance and local variations and specific contributions from state and local governments would be a very virtuous model. So such a proposal has been made by France during the presidency. And we agree that local and national authorities should go from procurement to investment regarding technology. And every stakeholder, from the citizen to the mayor to the civil servant, must have a say in the tech itself. Thank you.
Thank you, Pierre-Louis. That was really, very, I'd say, intensive program that France is rolling out around this question of digital inclusivity. And I really, underline the points that you're making, that the smart city is not a city focused on technology, but focused on the people. And it also came out in the previous panel's ideal city word cloud. That you're investing as much in people and their capacity, and with these digital advisors and with the trainings that you're offering, as also in the technological side and the access side. So I think that's something that's really worth underlining, and that we can pick up also maybe in our in the next round of questions. Just also a reminder for those of you watching, please do put any questions or comments you have in the chat, and we'll try and pick up one or two at the end. I'll move to the European level now. So Maria Yaroyani, you are working on particularly the climate neutral and smart cities mission for DG Research. So can you tell us a little bit about the actions that you're taking and what we need to do to arrive at this ideal just digital city?
Thank you very much. Could you please put up a few slides that I have made? Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to expand a little on what we're doing under the climate neutral and smart cities. The next slide, please. So as we know today, almost 75% of Europeans live in the cities, and this is increased is due to increase by 83 at least percent. The cities are in the vanguard of efforts to deliver the European Green Deal, to deliver on the urban agenda for the EU. And in fact, DG Research and Innovation is delivering with regard to policy, but also with regard to the knowledge pillar of the urban agenda of the EU, of the UN Habitat New Global Agenda, the urban agenda partnerships, and of course, all other international agreements, the European Green Deal, to make Europe the first climate neutral continent. As I said before in your question, cities, we consider cities as living laboratories and hubs of open innovation, and where challenges that we are dealing and addressing is climate change, and of course climate neutrality is a cross-sectoral challenge across energy, mobility, health and well-being, social innovation and inclusion, circular economy. Next slide, please. And so we are running research and innovation actions towards the main target of Horizon Europe, ever biggest operation, climate neutral and smart cities mission. And also the new city partnership, drive urban transitions. But with the Horizon Europe mission on climate neutral and smart cities, we wish to empower cities in the green and digital transformation through new forms of participatory, innovative governance, engaging the citizens as main actors of innovation and co-creation. Horizon 2020, of course, was the precursor, and I'm mentioning Horizon 2020 because there we created a network of 500 smart and sustainable cities. Next one, please. Where we adopted a human-centered approach, a holistic approach, which we continue to support under the climate neutral and smart cities. And we continue to promote new paths of digital transformation to foster this transition on climate, energy, and mobility. And I wish to give an example for how we see a digital city, and in between all these projects that we have funded for a total budget of 3.1 billion euro. I would like to refer to a project, one among the flagship projects, for instance, what we are promoting under Horizon 2020, where Amsterdam, Milan, Barcelona, Copenhagen, Zagreb, Tallinn, Blondos, and other European cities twinning with international cities, Geneva, Paris, also European cities, they created career opportunities for new jobs, bringing in the youth, so addressing startups, SMEs, young people in digital manufacturing and makers economy sector. And these projects worked in abandoned, derelict industrial neighborhoods and help to transform industrial cities into productive city neighborhoods and inclusive cities. for young residents. For instance, the Amsterdam pilot, which is building a strong network of Fab Labs makers and manufacturing companies. And as I said, another also, a lot of projects working on digital transformation, on inclusiveness, and having addressed all the urban sector is on digital water, on water management, on circular economy, and I mention again here projects having demonstrated digital human-centered solutions in big cities such as Milan, Rome, Berlin, Paris, Sofia, Trondheim, for integrated, for instance, urban water management, and stimulating the market development and launching new startups and SMEs, and all this being done with new digital solutions and co-implemented with the citizens, young citizens, and technologies and digital solutions which are human-centered and inclusive. Next one, please. And so, as I said, Horizon 2020 has been the precursor for launching the Horizon Europe Cities Mission, Climate Neutral and Smart Cities Mission, with the first aim to deliver the first 100 climate neutral and smart cities by 2030, and the rest of the cities, European cities, to follow the first 100 as example, and also to become innovation hubs and climate neutral by 2040, 2050. Next one, please. So in the climate neutral cities, as I said, we are, the aim is to reach climate neutrality by 2030, starting with the 100 cities which are under the process now of, I would say, selection, but announcement. We're going to co-create with the citizens. The cities which will be selected are going to co-create with citizens climate city contracts, which climate city contracts is not binding contracts, but is a memorandum of understanding with the mayor of the city or the authorized representative of the mayor of the city, who is going. So they are going to build and develop a plan for climate neutrality, investment plan, financial plans, and this will give to this 100 first climate neutral cities by 2030 emission label. Next one, please. You have all these websites where you can follow what is happening in the city's mission, what are the calls that we are launching. I'm going very briefly to mention them. And of course, any question you would like to address to me or directly to the Horizon Cities mission. What I would like to say here is that we have launched the call for the first interested climate prepared cities and committed cities to become climate neutral. And we have completed the selection of these cities. And these are the first cities that are going to be supported in their journey towards climate neutrality by the mission platform. And we're almost ready to announce these cities. So these cities will work towards climate neutrality with the support of a mission platform. Is the Net Zero Cities Consortium is another grant. And they will proceed with overcoming regulatory, legislative obstacles, but also financial advice and financial support, opening related calls, and also advising them on how to ensure the financial means and to reach out to other programs and not only research and innovation programs. We're going to announce, so as I said, very soon. What I wanted to say is that the digital aspects remain a very important figure for the city's mission, because it is hard to imagine a city becoming climate neutral without being smart at the same time. But here I'm adding always the term human-centered city, inclusive, diverse, just city. I will also mention what is happening with the cities which are not selected under this process of the 100 of the open call we did. The rest of the cities can apply in the Horizon Europe standard calls. We have, in fact, one that is running, and the closing date, one of the closing dates is today. And this is working on urban planning and design to support visionary, people-centric urban plan and design practices, and to enable the transition towards just, sustainable, resilient, climate-neutral cities. Every city could apply in this call, and these are large demonstration, research, innovation projects. Also, another opening for the cities is we are working on the positive clean energy district. So this is another call which is running by Horizon Europe standard calls, where we wish to improve. So the clean energy, we wish to support renewables and ICT and environment at district scale, at local scale, in order to make cities more livable, healthier, resource efficient, and climate neutral. And of course, a call on urban mobility. And last but not least, there is a call on creating a global knowledge center, and this is to share that all urban planners, civil servants, local authorities they have the opportunity to exchange best research innovation practices and solutions. This is also another call as a support coordinated action. And as my concluding remarks, I would say that we have a very ambitious plan and the biggest ever operation in the research innovation program with the climate neutral and smart cities. And to accomplish it and promote the smart and climate neutral city by 2030, we need to work with all stakeholders, with all urban stakeholders, stakeholder community, with all of you, local authorities, innovators, researchers, representatives of businesses, citizens, education institutions, stakeholder platforms, in an open, cross-cutting and inclusive way. Because the post-COVID recovery measures will be very important and demands are very competing. The city's mission will play an important role in this recovery, but to become successful, it has to get the support of all local, regional, national stakeholders, and this will be a great challenge. A climate neutral and smart city will lead to more prosperity, green spaces, better air quality, less pollution, inclusive access to improved housing conditions and mobility, improved access to urban digital services, and we aim at a city where citizens' well-being is at the center of its policies and actions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Maria, for this overview of how the climate and smart cities mission is also supporting cities in this role. And you mentioned the importance of this co-creation and collaboration with all the stakeholders at local level, at national level, and regional level. So I think that's a good transition to bring in Nicolas Castet. So as City of Agen, you have been looking directly at this collaborative governance process in the Active Citizens Network. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about how you are involving stakeholders in the local level in your city, and how that's helping you create a just and digital city.
Yes. Well, we have tried to be, as I said before, there's a defiance between citizens and elected officials, and we have tried to be as transparent as possible. And in this way, the municipal council, for instance, is online, so for people to follow it, and on a digital platform. We also are bringing the results of the political mandate decisions that are taken with a green light when something that has been proposed has been done, orange light when it's on the process of being done, or maybe a red light when it's been abandoned. And for this specific aspect, we always explain why. When something can't be done, we explain the reason why in the political mandate it's been cancelled. This brings more confidence with the citizen, and the fact that it's on a public access as well, because it's on the website of the city. People can have a look at it and also, of course, ask elected official why or how things are going, and etc. So this main idea is to bridge the gap between municipality and citizens. Another digital aspect, because we try to involve citizens, as you understood, with mainly the neighborhood councils, but we also tried using digital tools. We set up a tool called Tell My City. So it's an application, and it's concerning citizens' participation in the life of the city. That is to say, when a citizen is within the city and he finds an issue in the city, road trouble or bench that has been broken or some garbage that are on the pavement or things like that, it's possible with this application to take a photo and send it to the department, the municipal department, and the administration. They will try to solve it as quickly as possible. Of course, the process of solving the solution is during the whole process, we keep the citizen informed of where things are going, and either it has been done already or it's going to be done in the day or whatever. But we realized that with this digital tool, it still needs to have human beings behind. This tool that are there to support us, to support the administration and support the citizen, can't be only digital. It needs human beings behind to work on it and to answer and to bring answers very quickly. And because sometimes people, they just call the town hall and they need to speak to someone. So it's a tool, it's useful, but it needs to have civil servants behind. And also these digital tools, it works because it's only dedicated to one specific topic, which is, when you have any issue within the city. For instance, we have within the network, because Agen is not, we didn't invent anything. I mean, this kind of application, we can see it in plenty of several cities in Europe, and some of our partners have one as well, but not working as well as the one we have in Agen, because they try to put a lot of different options on their application, which means that it's dedicated to plenty of administrative aspects. You can ask for an appointment, you can ask for to redo an ID or passport or whatever, but in the end it's too complicated. So basically the citizens are kind of lost with this kind of multifunctional application, and they don't use it, basically. So we have to be aware of the digital this digital aspect. It can work if it's simple, if it's something that people can access easily. So this is why in Agen we decided to dedicate it to only one topic. And of course, this digital tool can't be the only alternative for citizens, because some of them, even if nowadays nearly everyone has a smartphone, but some of them still need to have access to paperwork and things like that. So we need to keep using the digital tool is a good thing, but we need to keep possibility to use paperwork as well. For instance, we've been observing young generation who are very, very strong with the smartphones and new technologies, specifically on social networks like Instagram, TikTok, etc. But we've seen that this young generation have difficulties when it comes to administrative matters, when it comes to create in social services an account or things like that. It can be kind of tricky for them because they are not very at ease with this tool. So we have also to keep in mind that this kind of tool, everyone, I mean, the young generations seem to be easy with them, but it's not so easy for them actually. But of course they work a lot. We've seen that they use their smartphone like on all the time for using QR code or things like that. They use it a lot when they want to get informed. So this is something we have also we keep also in mind when we want to communicate on the city. We use QR code because they just pass by and take a photo of the QR code and they are on the website, and so it's quick and easy for them. But yeah, still something very specifically dedicated is one of the main aspect I would say that we have to keep in mind. And this human aspect also is very important. For instance, in our network, we have one of our cities who dedicated a whole department for citizens with a specific support for digital exclusions. They have something like 15 or 16 civil servants who are dedicated to this topic. So when citizens have issues or need some support with digital tools, they can come to the town hall and they have human beings, I would say, to support them, not only digital tools. So my first recommendation would be to set up departments and provide human resources to accompany citizens in the digital transition. Reinforcing the idea having digital tools does not exclude the need of human beings. On this digital aspect, we also had for the neighborhood council our first during last election we had our first possibility to vote online, and this we realized that it increased the participation during the election. So using the tool mainly with, I would say, young generation for this case, they voted and they get involved in the voting process. So this is a very interesting aspect as well to take into account. This is something that again still needs paperwork. I mean, we can't do only voting online. It wouldn't work. So we had both aspects during our last elections for the neighborhood council, and it worked pretty well actually, because all the generation could find a way to take part to this election. So we also have within the neighborhood council, we are trying to link people, specifically using the strength we have on the territory. It's not this digital aspect has not to be only something coming from the administration and the politician, but something that has to be shared and built together. And using all the strength of the territory. For instance, we experimented asking students in communication to work with neighborhood council for digital aspects, and it worked pretty well. So we have to also think of all the possibilities we have on our territories, to try to involve them in this digital aspect and digital change.
Thank you.
So
maybe I could just ask you if you want to sum up with your last recommendation, and then we can maybe take a question also from the
so yeah, basically my main last recommendation would be to decentralize government structure to include citizens in digital, in just digital city making.
Thank you, Nicola. Sorry to have rushed you at the end.
No problem.
We can see, I mean, we knew from the beginning that this topic is such I mean, as a cross-cutting issue, touches on, you know, every aspect of local and national policymaking. But you really put the finger, on the aspects of digital public services and digital, let's say, participatory process, but not focusing only on tools, but on people. And maybe we have time just to maybe ask you and Pierre-Louis, if he's still there, maybe to react on one of the questions that we had from our participants, which focuses on this capacity building aspect. Given that across Europe, we've been asked that there are such strong variations in socio-economic as well as institutional dimensions of regions and cities. The question asks, how can the state and the EU level, but also I would put the question to the local level, face this problem of lack of administrative know-how and know-why in cities and regions that are lagging behind? So maybe Nicola and then Pierre-Louis, how have you seen through your network and through your experience, the difficulties and what you're putting in place to build up capacity for your public servants to deal with these questions?
Yeah, in as I said, in Agen, we try to organize some training sessions to support, because of course the administration is not always ready to make the change and always equipped. They don't know how to do, and they need this support, and organizing some training session specifically dedicated to elected officials, but also to civil servants, so that they can take into account this change and evolve with what is being asked, specifically with the digital aspect.
Thanks, Nicola. And I'm sorry, the time is marching on. So maybe if you don't mind, Pierre-Louis, we can refer to your previous intervention where you insisted also a lot on the human capacity needs to affect the digital transition. I will now hand the floor over to Livia, who has the difficult task of resuming those interventions into the policy recommendations that we have to present to you, and also then to allow you to have your say on your prioritization. Livia.
Yes, thank you so much, Noala. Well, it was very dense again, but we prepared kind of a concluding slides to help you let's say, identifying which are the main elements that we discussed. As you can see, it's full of text, so it really gives you an idea of the density of our discussion. But indeed, starting with Allison's recommendation, facilitating access to finance and support for tech and digital entrepreneurs. Then we talked about the importance of diversity, inclusion, equity, really to be embedded in public policy. Then indeed with Pierre-Louis, we touched upon the importance of designing people-centered smart territories with residents, and we saw that this actually came back with a lot of other interventions. The importance of investing in digital commons and we using a participatory governance approach, so really working with public and private stakeholders together. Then we saw with Nicola really a bit more of a concrete examples on how this citizens inclusion could work. So the recommendation here is to decentralize government structure in order to facilitate this inclusion and foster just digital city making. but then also the importance of civil servants and to have dedicated departments that could really facilitate citizens in this transition. Then looking at Maria's intervention and the reflecting on the European mission on smart cities and climate neutral cities, the importance here and the emphasis was put on the methods, the working methods. So the importance of working in a holistic, innovative, cross-cutting and inclusive way, also multi-governmental. So I believe that this multi-level panel here is really doing its job. So good to know that everything is working coherently. And then the last two recommendations, last but not least, they were added by the upcoming Czech presidency that is going to focus on the topic of digitalization and innovation. So we asked them actually to share with us also a few recommendations. And these are the two that they wanted to present to you today. And they're pretty much in line with what we discussed. So to encourage stakeholder cooperation. And here we see again this idea of cooperating towards the same goal and objective, but also to use digitalization as a mean really to support disadvantaged cities and regions. And these were learnings from a successful project that they carried out. And I will ask also my colleague to paste the link to this project in the chat. Unfortunately, the website is in Czech, but maybe you can help yourself with some Google Translate and or send us an email and we will reply to your question on the project. So knowing all this and being aware of what we have been discussing for the past hour, I would like to first ask Nuala and maybe also Allison to quickly react on that. And then we would really like to close with asking you to vote on what are your top 3 recommendations. But first, I would like to ask Nuala indeed to share a quick reaction with us.
Yeah, thanks, Livia. Indeed, as you said, it was a very dense discussion, and the recommendations reflect that. But I particularly noted, throughout the conversation and reflected in the recommendations, the importance of, I say, a people-focused digital strategy. That a digital city is also an inclusive city, and that this also links to the recommendation for ensuring that the cities have the not only the tools but the training and the capacity to implement these policies. And I think also to reflect on the European level and also the role that the EU level can play in ensuring that across all of the programs and initiatives that it finances, that the digital aspect is of course taken into consideration, but really with a people-centered and inclusive way. So this recommendation also to have this embedded in EU programs is I think underlined for me.
Yes, thank you so much. Maybe also a quick reaction from Allison. And yeah, just as a disclaimer, I think we will close with 5 minutes a bit late. I hope you can stay with us. Allison, please.
Yeah, thank you. What a wide-reaching discussion that was. So really interesting interventions, I think. And for me, I guess I'll just group my reflections under the banner, change the narrative. I think that was the biggest thing that came out for me. So we need to move from a tech-focused to a human-focused approach. We need to stop treating tech as sort of a vertical sector and think about it as more as a utility. Move towards participative co-creation, treating cities as living labs. That just cities are created by citizens, with citizens and for citizens. I thought that was a really powerful statement from Nicolas. We need to move towards common ownership of tech. I thought that was a really interesting commentary from Pierre-Louis. And I would comment on that, common ownership, but maybe also powered by co-creation, which I think would be really important, or co-creation and co-investment, I think would be really important. Major issues around the digital divide. We need to address that digital gap. We need to democratize access so that everyone has equal access to the solutions that we're developing. That everything needs to be open, cross-cutting, inclusive, and that no one is left behind. Those are the sort of most powerful messages that I took from the session. So really interesting. Thanks for inviting me.
Thank you, Alison. If I could, I would send you an empty slide so that you can fill it with all your very interesting takeaways. And now, before letting also our participants go, we just would like to pick up your brains also and ask, what are your top 3 recommendations? Oh, you already voted, I see. Okay, well, that's great. So we already have the results. Indeed, our idea was to ask you indeed to vote. What are your top 3 recommendations between those that have been presented? I can see that the first is diversity, inclusion, and equity in public policies. Yeah, well, quite covering a broad array of it's. We can almost say that it's more like a principle than a recommendation, but we will make sure to transform it into a very concrete one. Then support digitalization to foster growth of disadvantaged cities and regions. Design people-centered smart territories with citizens, and then following the centralized government structure to include citizens. But we see that the narrative, as I said before, it's really coherent. So even though this graph shows some winning recommendation, I really would like to emphasize that it was a successful discussion because it was very coherent. So I'm happy we gathered, and I believe we gathered a lot of interesting information and inputs, and we have enough material to start really drafting this recommendation for the French Council presidency. And I would like maybe also to ask Nuala to react to on these results and on the discussion as a whole.
Yes, I think it's not surprising. I think that the first recommendation is to have this cross-cutting principle in all public policies, and I think we heard very clearly why that's important. I also wanted to pick up. It's now gone down to 4th position. It was in 3rd position when I was looking at it just before, around designing people-centered smart territories. And maybe just to underline also the. We heard from the national level in France how they're supporting capacity building, but also at the European level through the URBACT program, we really support the cities that work in our networks with capacity building, and in particular on this digital cross-cutting issue. It will be also a cross-cutting theme running through the next generation of URBACT, alongside green and inclusive gender equal cities. And so we'll also be providing tools for all cities of all sizes to be able to implement and to build their own capacities to design inclusive, smart territories. So I think that really reflects the needs there, and that we're trying to fill that need at all levels of policy making. But I think this is a very rich set of recommendations that we can forward to the French presidency.
Certainly, certainly we will. Well, thank you so much, Nuala, then, and thank you so much to all the speakers, to the technical team, colleagues, and everyone who have been busy working on and preparing this policy lab. Thank you all for your valuable input. I would just like to remind you also that we have another session coming up on the just productive city making that will be organized in cooperation with the OECD. So my colleagues are pasting all the relevant links in the chat. But as we really saw from this session, everything is quite intertwined, and we really need to look at things with an integrated approach. So don't miss that Policy Lab 2, because I'm sure it will have something interesting also in relation to just and digital city making. So just a big thank you to everyone again. And of course, if you have any questions, just feel free to email us at pfu@ukn.eu. And yes, we will update you on the next steps and on this final recommendation. Thank you again, and I wish you a nice day.